provocative, extremely socially outcast. And as a matter of fact, flapper girls, which y'all have mentioned before, flapper girls, these young girls that cut their hair kind of short, though they call it a bob. They bob their hair real short. They wear provocative dresses, and the reason why they're called flappers, there's actually two different possible meanings behind flapper girls. Is number one, it was that their dress is flapped, which was something that your dress was not supposed to do. It wasn't supposed to be short enough to flap. Or the other possibility is an old English slang word, which was for prostitute. And so they were basically, when you called a girl a flapper girl, you weren't paying someone a compliment. It was more of an insult. It was something to put you down. However, these young ladies and the young men that associated with them kind of take this culture and they say, you know what, society might say different, society might say otherwise, but we're going to embrace this. You had what was called speakeasies, because you couldn't serve alcohol out in public, and so where are you supposed to go and party? You go to these speakeasies, which are these underground bars, which you have to maybe provide a secret password for, or know a secret knock for, or know someone that'll let you in. And you go in and you have these parties and you have all this other stuff, and if you were to walk into a speakeasy in the 20s, if you lived in a city like Chicago or New York or Boston or some other large city, and you were to walk into a speakeasy during the 20s, you would come in and it was a really nice speakeasy. Now some of these places are just holes in the wall, right? And they're serving basically whiskey that's been watered down. But if you have the money, you would go to a really nice speakeasy and you would come up though and you'd knock on the door and some guy would slide a slat open and he would say, "What's the password?" And you'd give him a password. And then he'd close it and let you in. And when you walked in, you might have to go down a couple of different steps. You might have to do these different things. But eventually, when you walked into the actual bar area, you would hear talking and laughing. You would hear glasses clinking together. You would hear all this other stuff. And you also might hear, pull up a YouTube video real quick that I've got pulled up for y'all. It might be a little loud. This is a guy by the name of Louis Armstrong. And Louis Armstrong is probably one of the greatest jazz players that ever lived. He played trumpet. He also sang. His singing was interesting. It gives me hope because his singing is not that great, and neither is mine. So I'm hopefully, maybe some people will find mine likable. Probably not. But, all right.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, here's one you all can sing with us. With the Saints go marching in. Saints go marching in. Now when the saints go marching in, yes, I want to be in that number. Now when the saints go marching in, sing it again. Now when the saints marching in. Now when the saints go marching in, yes, I want to be in that number. Now when the saints go marching in, oh, y'all sing pretty out there. Joe Downing, boy.
deep inside of it right now. But Louis Armstrong comes about a little bit later, but he is, when he starts playing trumpet professionally, he is in the 20s. He does live through the later 20s though, and really starts playing then. But what I want you to notice about this though is that, of course, the 20s didn't have film, so this is later. But this is the type of stuff you would hear walking into a speakeasy. Now I want you to notice something. What did you notice about the two main people in that video? Who did they focus on more than anybody else?
The girl and the guy.
All right, the girl and the guy. What were their race?
Black. They're all black.
All right. All of them were African American, or at least most of them were. I think the clarinet player was white and the drummer was white. But the trombone player, Louis Armstrong, and the lady were African American. And what we have to understand very, very carefully, this is still a time of supreme segregation. It's still a time of supreme racism. This is a time when the Ku Klux Klan has started to rise again, though, and is starting to lynch people in the South. And so what we have, though, is that jazz and these speakeasies, the Roaring Twenties is changing things. Things are being different. Now, of course, African Americans are still looked at second-class citizens, but inside the speakeasy, if you've got a talent like Louis Armstrong or a guy like Duke Ellington or any of these other guys that really have this musical talent, you're going to be able to have some sort of success that you normally wouldn't. You've got guys like Langston Hughes, who is part of this thing called the Harlem Renaissance, which comes out of New York, though. And you've got these musicians and these poets that are sitting there, and they're talking about being African American. They're talking about being African American while being American and supposedly in the land of the free. You have all these different things, and jazz is a very, very African American music style that eventually was adopted by white people, just like blues was eventually adopted by white people and turned into rock and roll. And even the first rock and roll guys like Chuck Berry and other people, it starts as an African American art form, and then it kind of goes to the broader appeal, and it gives legitimacy to some of these people who did not have a chance to express themselves in any other way. And so we have the 20s, this time of change, this time of partying, great economic success. People are getting rich. People, the middle class is growing. Everything's going good, especially after getting out of World War I, because that's when the 20s really starts, is in 1919, when we get out of World War I and everything starts getting better. However, here was the issue, is that people were buying stocks left and right. Not yet. Not yet. People were buying stocks left and right, because the stock market's growing, everything's looking good. However, right now, if I were to bring in a pie, everyone like pie? I like pie. If I were to bring in a pie, and I'll tell, all right guys, every single one of us is going to get a piece of this pie. Every single one of us. Me and Miss Jennifer and everybody going to get a piece of this pie. Right now we have 17 people here, if I counted correctly, just real quick. Can you imagine cutting up a regular pie into 17 pieces and everyone being pleased with their piece? No. Do you really get that much pie? No. And that's what eventually happens with these Roaring Twenties. Go ahead. Is that people buy so much into these stocks that eventually they start becoming less and less. They start becoming worth less and less. Also, at the same time, we are